scenes of a year ago and those of yesterday mixing up and linking themselves together, familiar places shaping themselves out in the darkness from things which, when approached, were, of all others, the most remote and most unlike them. Sometimes a strange confusion in her mind relative to the occasion of her being there, and the place to which she was going, and the people she was with, and imagination suggesting remarks and questions which sounded so plainly in her ears that she would start and turn and be almost tempted to reply. All the fancies and contradictions common in watching and excitement and restless change of place beset the child. She happened, while she was thus engaged, to encounter the face of the man on deck, in whom the sentimental stage of drunkenness had now succeeded to the boisterous, and who, taking from his mouth a short pipe, quilted over with string for its longer preservation, requested that she would oblige him with a song. 'You've got a very pretty voice, a very soft eye, and a very strong memory,' said this gentleman. 'The voice and eye I've got evidence for, and the memory's an opinion of my own, and I'm never wrong. Let me hear a song this minute.'
'I don't think I know one, sir,' returned Nell.
'You know 47 songs,' said the man, with a gravity which admitted of no altercation on the subject. 47's your number. Let me hear one of 'em, the best. Give me a song this minute.' Not knowing what might be the consequences of irritating her friend, and trembling with the fear of doing so, poor Nell sang him some little ditty which he had learnt in happier times, and which was so agreeable to his ear that on its conclusion he in the same peremptory manner requested to be favoured with another, to which he was so obliging as to roar a chorus to no particular tune, and with no words at all, but which amply made up in its amazing energy for its deficiency in other respects. The noise of this vocal performance awakened the other man, who, staggering upon deck and shaking his late opponent by the hand, swore that singing was his pride and joy and chief delight, and that he desired no better entertainment. With a third call, more imperative than either of the two former, Nell felt obliged to comply, and this time a chorus was maintained not only by the two men together, but also by the third man on horseback, who, being by his position debarred from a nearer participation in the revels of the night, roared when his companions roared, and rent the very air. In this way, with little cessation, and singing the same songs again and again, the tired and exhausted child kept them in good humour all that night, and many a cottager who was roused from his soundest sleep by the discordant chorus as it floated away upon the wind, hid his head beneath the bedclothes and trembled at the sounds. At length the morning dawned. It was no sooner light than it began to rain heavily. As the child could not endure the intolerable vapours of the cabin, they covered her, in return for her exertions, with some pieces of sailcloth and ends of tarpaulin, which sufficed to keep her tolerably dry and to shelter her grandfather besides. As the day advanced, the rain increased. At noon it poured down more hopelessly and heavily than ever, without the faintest promise of abatement. They had for some time been gradually approaching the place for which they were bound. The water had become thicker and dirtier, other barges coming from it passed them frequently, the paths of coal ash and huts of staring brick marked the vicinity of some great manufacturing town, while scattered streets and houses and smoke from distant furnaces indicated that they were already in the outskirts. Now the clustered roofs and piles of buildings, trembling with the working of engines, and dimly resounding with their shrieks and throbbings, the tall chimneys vomiting forth a black vapour which hung in a dense ill-favoured cloud about the housetops, and filled the air with gloom, the clank of hammers beating upon iron, the roar of busy streets and noisy crowds, gradually augmenting until all the various sounds blended into one, and none was distinguishable for itself, announced the termination of their journey. The boat floated into the wharf to which it belonged. The men were occupied directly. The child and her grandfather, after waiting in vain to thank them or ask them whither they should go, passed through a dirty lane into a crowded street, and stood amid its din and tumult, and in the pouring rain, as strange, bewildered, and confused as if they had lived 1,000 years before,
and were raised from the dead and placed there by a miracle. Chapter 44.